Hi, boys and girls. Today we are going to be reading chapter 25, 26, and 27. I'm reading 3 chapters with you today in the book called 11 by Tom Rogers. And these 3 chapters, I just want you to be thinking about in the back of your mind the topic of friendships and the importance of them. Okay? Chapter 25 is called Ghosts. It's 12:46 p.m. Who are you calling, Mom? Alex flipped his phone shut and then opened it and tried again, willing the call to go through. His eyes landed on a billboard atop an apartment building. It showed an airplane flying over the rooftops and a cheap fare to Boston under the slogan, "We bring the world to you." He'd probably seen it 1,000 times before. Today it made him shudder. Why do you think it made him shudder? I'm thinking it's probably because low-flying airplanes, it probably just gave him that fear of an airplane flying into a building. Okay, let's go to the next paragraph. He put a finger in his other ear, listening hard, but once again the phone beeped twice and then went dead. He checked the screen, though he already knew the message he would see. Call failed. Why do you think the calls were failing as they were trying to make phone calls on that particular morning in New York? If you think about it, the World Trade Center had both of the towers had collapsed, and so a lot of people were injured. The ones who were injured were probably trying to get a hold of their family, and then family members are trying to call them to see if they're alive or see if they're answering their phones. And so, because of that, probably the cell tower signals were just being jammed, and so it probably failed a lot of the phone calls that day because of everybody trying to use their phones. Nunu tugged at his shirt. Alex? What? She pointed down the street. Alex thought he was seeing a ghost. Then another, then another. They were walking uphill from the dock, some moving slowly and painfully, all of them pale and gray. All right, think back to the story a little earlier, and who do we remember who looked like that? Remember the man in the white shirt? When he saw his reflection in the window, he saw that that's what he looked like. He looked gray and full of ash and soot. And so this is what they're seeing now. They're seeing people coming from the buildings from downtown that they were trying to escape. And he can actually see that some of these people are walking down the street, and they're probably trying to get home, and they're walking slow. And so you could tell that they have been through a great ordeal, and they're just probably trying to get home to where they can get cleaned up. All right, let's go back to the book. They were walking uphill from the dock, some moving slowly and painfully, all of them pale and gray. Who are they? Nunu asked in a shaky whisper. Alex shook his head and drew back, sheltering Nunu behind his leg, trying not to let her see that he was scared. Only when the ghostly figures got closer did Alex realize these were just regular people, their clothes and hair and face coated in gray dust and ash. Why? Why were they so dirty? He wondered. Behind them came dozens more, traipsing off the dock, off the ferry boat from Manhattan. Finally it hit him. He waited until one of them passed close by, a man with only one shoe, walking gingerly on the ball of his bare foot. Were you at the World Trade Center? Alex asked. The man nodded. We were lucky, he said hoarsely, and then continued on. These were the survivors, Alex realized, making their way home. Until that moment, as horrible as the disaster had sounded to Alex, it had still felt far away and distant, across the river. Even when he'd seen the smoke from the fallen towers, it hadn't quite seemed possible. A part of him just couldn't believe it was real. Now it was right in front of him, close enough to touch, a real live person who'd been there, in the middle of the disaster. A real person, just like his father. Who was that? Asked Nunu. Remember, guys, Nunu has no clue what's gone on. He's kept this private from her so to not scare her. Alex glanced down at his sister. Her constant barrage of questioning usually annoyed him. She could be such a pest. Now she just looked small and afraid. They look like ghosts, she whispered. What should he tell her? He looked at the refugees, then back to Nunu. No. She was watching him intently, hanging on the words. No, those aren't ghosts. He fumbled for more but came up blank. And then he spotted a Dunkin' Donuts ad on the bus bench. The ad pictured a cup of orange juice and a piping hot blueberry muffin. Those are the muffin people. Nunu's eyes got a little bigger. The what? You don't know about the muffin people? He was totally winging it here. Nunu shook her head. They were trying to make the biggest blueberry muffin in the world, so they could get in the Guinness Book of World Records and be all rich and famous and stuff. How big? Big. I think they used like 4 million tons of flour and 30 million blueberries. It was going to be huge. He nodded, finding his rhythm. But when they went to bake it, they completely forgot they were indoors. The muffin just kept rising and rising, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. It smashed out the windows and pressed up against the roof, and they all ran for their lives. Then, boom, the muffin blew up, and flour went everywhere. It was a huge mess, and they didn't get in the Guinness Book of World Records. But they all got the day off and went home covered in flour. Alex looked down at Nunu, and that's why they look like that. The end. Nunu just stared at him for a second. He thought he lost her. And then she laughed. Boom! Nice save, Alex thought to himself, and they continued on their way. Chapter 26 is called The Man in the White Shirt, and this time is 12:46 p.m. The man in the white shirt ducked his head into the tiny grocery store. Any chance I could use your phone? I lost mine back there somewhere. The grocer tried the phone on the counter and then shook his head. Everything's down. He reached into his pocket and held out his cell phone. Here, circuits have been jammed all morning, but maybe your luck's better than mine? The man in the white shirt dialed. His fingers were shaking as he pressed the keys. For a long time he heard nothing. Then the line came alive. He heard a click. His heart jumped into his throat, but an instant later, a fast busy signal filled his ear. No luck, he murmured and handed the phone back. Wait! The grocer held out a bottle of water. The man in the white shirt fished in his pocket for change but came up empty. The grocer waved him off and shoved the bottle into his hand. Please. Out on the sidewalk, the man in the white shirt opened the bottle of water and drank deeply. He hadn't realized how thirsty he'd become. He poured a little over his face and hands began to wipe away the grit. Did you notice how the grocery store worker, how he just gave him a bottle of water, didn't ask for money, he just gave it to him? Here's another act of kindness that somebody in the community did to help somebody who was in need without expecting anything in return. That's one thing that people noticed on the day of and many, many weeks following 9/11, that people were willing to give of their time, give of their items to help others in need. All right, next paragraph. Something flopped to the ground behind him, landing with a hollow thump. He turned around to find a filthy gray bird flapping around on the pavement at his feet. It was struggling, unable to fly, its body and wings coated with grime. The man in the white shirt bent down with the bottle and poured water over the bird's body. The bird turned strangely calm, giving in, standing still as the dust ran off its feathers in dirty rivulets. When the bottle ran dry, the man in the white shirt stepped back. A snow-white dove now stood before him, glistening in the sun. The dove tested its wings with a couple of flaps, then soared away in a blinding fury of white. And chapter 27, called Friends, 1:07 p.m. Mac snatched up the phone before the second ring. "Bobby," he blurted. He tried to keep the disappointment out of his voice as he heard his oldest friend from the army days of the other end of the line calling from California. "Oh, hi, Charlie." Mac rubbed his eyes and paced back and forth in the kitchen. "Nope, nothing yet." "Yeah, Tower 1, the North Tower." "No, it fell second." "Yeah, I'm sure." Maybe that gave him a little more time? "I know. I can't either." Okay, let's stop right there. Mac is having this conversation with a friend calling from California. Now remember, keep in mind, New York is in a completely different time zone than California. New York is 3 hours ahead of California. So when the towers were collapsing, it was still 3 hours earlier. So his friend in California probably just woke up that morning and turned on the news and saw what was happening. And so he's probably been trying to call his friend, Mac, and he got a hold of him. And the phone did ring, and Mac was hoping it was Bobby, but it was his friend in California checking on Mac. Because that's what friends do. When you think that somebody might be in trouble, or you're worried or concerned about him, you give him a phone call. And so his friend all the way in California was calling and checking in on his friend, Mac, from years ago. It says a friend from his Army days. Well, we know Mac is an older gentleman, an elderly person. So this has probably been a lifelong friend for 40 years probably, and so, or even longer. And so he's just checking in on his buddy because that's what friends do. All right, let's go back to the book. He glanced into the other room. Dottie was staring out the window, paying no attention to the nature documentary on her TV. Mac lowered his voice. No, she doesn't know. I doubt she'll understand anyway. But the pictures will get her too worked up. Listen, I should probably ring off in case he tries to call. He listened, nodding. I'll let you know as soon as I hear. Thanks for calling, Charlie. He swallowed hard as his voice cracked. You're a good friend. And that's the end of chapter 27. We're going to stop right there, and we will pick up with chapter 28 tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye-bye.